Hello! Welcome to Squid Essays. Inking your academic pen. My name is Julie and I will be your instructor as we read through Education of the Old Man, A Perspective. The article source is embedded in the video description below. Feel free to read along. Please note that you can get a custom, plagiarism-free essay for as little as $10 a page at Squid Essays. The link is in the description. Education is an important sphere of social life. In the process of education, pupils get knowledge and experience of other people. Without education, it is hard to imagine normal functioning of an individual in the society. Plato, John Dewey, and Rousseau lived in different times, but each of them dedicated much time to the study of the concept of education. In his famous work Republic, Plato presents one of the most influential early accounts of education. His concept of education, mainly based on the method of dialogue. Since Plato was Socrates' pupil, his concept of education reflects Socrates' method. In his Republic, Plato makes an attempt to describe an ideal society. He describes its political and educational system in great detail. Plato believes that educators must care about their pupils. He believes that moral duty of educators is to put their pupils on the way of wisdom and true moral virtues. He believes that educators have responsibility for those they teach. Socratic method introduced by Plato assumes that both teacher and his pupil know the limits of their knowledge. Plato strongly believes that knowledge will not come from teaching but from questioning, Plato 154. Plato states that educational requirements depend on the life stages of pupil development. Plato underlines the great role of exercise and discipline. He also describes speaking and games as important methods of education. Plato believes that children should enter school at the age of 6. Firstly, they learn to count, to write and to read. Later, music and sports are added to the list of necessary disciplines. Plato's educational system is developed for people till they turn 50 years old. When people turn 18, they get to military and physical training. Higher education starts after 21 years old. People start learning philosophy only after they turn 30 years old. Plato believes that younger minds will not be ready to perceive complicated philosophical categories. Along with this study, people can serve in the army or dedicate themselves to civil service. Plato's educational model presents lifelong education. The society described by Plato is based on this model. He depicts a learning society, where education plays an extremely important role. Plato believes that society can grow and develop only if its members constantly study and develop as well. Dewey in his experience and education makes an attempt to combine ideas of traditional and progressive education, taking the best from both approaches. First of all, he proves that both systems taken separately cannot provide good educational system. The main reasons of this he sees in the fact that none of the systems is based on the philosophy of experience. Dewey himself believes that philosophy of experience should become the main driving tool for educational system. He believes that all teachers and educators who want to perform successfully and bring use to the educational process should be concerned about the essence and ultimate goals of educational process. Dewey also believes that philosophy of education must be directed, not on the labels but rather on use education can bring to students. Dewey describes the principle of continuity, which helps to distinguish between experiences with educational value and those without. Included in this principle of continuity is his definition of growth: when and only when development in a particular line conduces to continuing growth does it answer to the criterion of education as growing. Dewey, 36. By these words, Dewey underlines that educators should be aware that not all experience can be useful for pupils, and the goal of educators is to distinguish experience which will bring only use to the students. An experience is a main point in Dewey's educational theory and philosophy of education. He gives it a primary place in the educational system. That is the reason choosing the right experience becomes so important for creating a correct system of education. Dewey does not treat all experiences as equally educative and believes that teachers' task should be to choose the best ones for his pupils. Connection between knowledge and experience is another important feature of Dewey's educational concept. Dewey criticizes educational methods which present knowledge without a context where it can be applied. In this way, knowledge does not become meaningful for students, and this way does not satisfy to the main purpose of education. Dewey criticizes traditional education, stating that was no demand that the teacher should become intimately acquainted with the conditions of the local community in order to utilize them as educational resources. Dewey 40. Dewey wants everything taught to have direct practical meaning. He believes that only this way students will be able to learn successfully and will be able to apply knowledge achieved in the classroom. Dewey also underlines the importance of intellectual freedom. At this point, he criticizes to a certain extent the idea of progressive education, which sacrifices, to his mind, intellectual freedom to the physical freedom. Educational concept of Rousseau is described in his famous work Émile or On Education. 5 books describe the life and development of imaginary boys since birth till childhood. Rousseau uses this image in order to create a picture of noble savage who lives in the city and perfectly performs in the society without losing connection with nature. The main idea of Rousseau is not directed teaching but rather creating a life situation where the child learns himself. For Rousseau, creating learning situation where the pupil learns himself is the main root of education. Rousseau believes that meeting cruelties of life is an important part of education. He thinks that this way the child will become prepared for hardships of life. People raised too delicately no longer find sleep elsewhere than on down. People accustomed to sleep on board find it everywhere. There is no hard bed for him who falls asleep as soon as he lies down. Rousseau, 129. Rousseau wants Émile to live healthy and strong. He believes that closeness with nature will help the child to get such characteristics. The only useful part of medicine is hygiene. And hygiene is itself less a science than a virtue. Temperance and work are the two true doctors of man. Work sharpens his appetite, and temperance prevents him from abusing it. Rousseau 55. Nature, according to Rousseau, should be the first source of education. The best thing which a teacher can do for this purpose is not to interfere with the natural process of education but only direct his student to necessary realizations in necessary time. Things become the second source of education according to Rousseau. After man gets his knowledge of nature, he can pass to the knowledge of things which surround him. Rousseau organizes his talks with Émile in such a way that he can learn the way things are built. Rousseau stresses that man-made things should be carefully selected for study. Another important object of study is ethics and morals. He believes that morals should be taught to children. At the same time, he also underlines that morals should not be taught in the form of preaching. Children can get moral rules and regulations if they see the way they work in life. The only lesson of morality appropriate to childhood, and the most important for every age, is never to harm anyone. The very precept of doing good, if it is not subordinated to this one, is dangerous, false, and contradictory. Rousseau, 104. Rousseau underlines that empathy is an important factor of education. He states that educators try to teach from their grown-up positions. At the same time, this way they often ignore child's inner world and feelings. They create a big distance between students and themselves. Under such conditions, successful education is not possible. We never know how to put ourselves in the place of children. We do not enter into their ideas. We lend them ours, and, always following our own reasoning, with chains of truth we heap up only follies and error in their hands. Rousseau 170. Ideas expressed by Rousseau became a very important step for the development of education. It gave new understanding to the goals of education. Works cited: Dewey, John. Experience and Education, Free Press, 1997. Plato, The Republic, trans. By H. P. D. Lee, London, Penguin, 1955. Rousseau, Jean-Jacques. Meal or on Education, Basic Books, 1975. Thank you for taking your time to listen to me. I hope you enjoyed learning about Education of the Old Man, a perspective as much as I did. Kindly remember that you can get a custom, plagiarism-free essay at Squid Essays for as little as $10. The link is in the description. See you next time.